Everyone immediately leaped back. They were taken aback. "Oh, that's quite unbelievable. Please tell me." Landon and Karen Grassel had a truly enchanting chemistry when Little House on the Prairie was on TV. They brought a smile to our faces, a chuckle to our hearts, and a wholesome getaway into the frontier lifestyle as Charles and Caroline Les. Unbeknownst to anybody, though, lurked a darkness beneath those touching scenes. Karen Grassel remained silent for decades, until this moment. Actress who played Ma is finally speaking out, which is a shocking development. What she went through behind the scenes will make you gasp for air. Grassel is revealing the ugly truth about her working relationship with Landon, which includes terrible maltreatment and intolerable stress on set. And it doesn't resemble the animated classic in the least. When filming Little House took place, what actually transpired on set? For what reason did Landon's actions drive Karen to her breaking point? Join us as we reveal the shocking reality of a hit American television series. Making it big in Hollywood, this is the Little House side they never wanted you to see. Karen Grassel was America's go-to mom icon for almost 10 years. A kind and strong pioneer woman who, on Little House on the Prairie, kept the Ingalls family united. However, Grassel's journey started in Northern California a long time before she became famous as Caroline Les. When Grassel was 5 years old, her family relocated to Ventura from where she was born in 1942. She felt a pull towards the limelight even as a little girl. She enrolled in a dancing studio nearby and immediately discovered her calling in school productions. Following her 1959 graduation from Ventura High School, she continued her education at some of the nation's most esteemed universities. Attending H. the college known as Sophie Newcomb Memorial. I attended Tulane University's Coordinate College from 1959 to 1960 before moving on to Berkeley. There, in 1965, she received a Bachelor of Arts in English and a Master of Arts in Theatrical Art. Still, Grassel wasn't done yet. A prestigious fellowship at the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art was bestowed upon her in recognition of her exceptional abilities. This was a pivotal moment in my life. She came back to the U.S. prepared to rule the stage after enhancing her abilities in London. Karen's background as an actress began in the theater. She honed her acting chops throughout summers at the Colorado Shakespeare Festival and the Stanford Contemporary Workshop, where she took on leading roles in classical plays. Memphis, Tennessee's Front Street Theater was the site of her debut professional performance. She continued on to New York City, where she became engrossed in the world of national stock and resident theaters. Additionally, she moved around the stage. Grassel won parts in 3 different network soap operas and made appearances on PBS and original shows. Although her run in The Gingham Dog on Broadway was brief, it was a watershed moment in her career. In 1972, she appeared at Denver's Ellich Theater alongside Marino Sullivan and Brandon Dew Wild, and she later stood in for Broadway giants like Gloria Swanson, Rosemary Murphy, and Butterflies Are Free. Tragically, Dew passed away soon after the final performance, shattering an otherwise successful production. Shakespeare in the Park Cymbeline featured Grassel, Christopher Walken, Sam W., and William Shakespeare, making it one of the most memorable stage appearances of her career. Cut off. There was no denying her versatility, but she had an unexpected breakthrough when she auditioned for the role of Caroline Les. Viewers of her TV shows didn't know much about her. However, that changed really fast. After auditioning for the position, Karen took the stage in the role that would shape her professional life. The first of 9 wonderful seasons of Little House on the Prairie aired in 1974. Her depiction of millions of people fell in love with Ma. There was more to Grassel's television legacy than just the Prairie. She appeared in an episode of Gunsmoke called The Wing, playing a bar girl entangled in a kidnapping scheme, immediately following filming the Little House pilot. Her subsequent film credits include Wyatt Earp, co-starring with Kevin Costner, and Harry's War, in which she portrayed Kathy opposite Edward Herrmann. Battered, a chilling thriller that Grassle co-wrote and starred in for NBC, dealt with real-life problems that women face. A formidable force both on and off-screen, she championed the Equal Rights Amendment, fought tirelessly to ensure that shelters received government financing, and stood in solidarity with battered women. She was a strong advocate for women's rights, who never shied away from using her celebrity to bring attention to the cause. The Prairie was far from her television credits. Cocaine, Crisis in Midair, One Man's Seduction, Between the Darkness and the Dawn were some of her made-for-TV film appearances. Hotel, Love Boat, and Murder were among the shows on which she appeared as a guest writer. Additionally, she had cameo appearances on Dina, The M.V. Griffin Show, and daytime viewers were treated to her charisma and friendliness on The Mike Douglas Show. Karen Grassel returned to the stage after her time on Prairie days ended. She was a founding member of Santa Fe, New Mexico's Resource Theater Company, and a subsequent member of the Actors Company of Kentucky's esteemed Actors Theater of Louisville. Once she made her home in the Bay Area in 2006, she began performing in shows at venues like the Aurora Theater, Theater Works, the Ride Down Mount Morgan Cabaret, and San Francisco Playhouse. She played the titular character in Driving Miss Daisy plays all across the United States, from Virginia to Manitoba. In 2008, she won the Outstanding Achievement Award for her work in cabaret. She also became the spokesperson for Premier Bathrooms, an organization that makes equipment to help the elderly live independently, demonstrating that she could be charming and approachable even in advertisements. Not to forget, a moving drama that aimed to bring attention to Alzheimer's illness was Karen's comeback to cinema in 2021. She shared the screen with such legendary Hollywood actors as George Chakiris, Olympia Dukakis, Tatum O'Neal, Louis Gossett Jr., and Cloris Leachman. Classically trained actress, television star, and staunch feminist Karen Grassel has been a constant. Hers is not merely an inspiring tale of triumph as she makes her way from the London stages to the American prairies. A narrative of resilience, perseverance, and enduring brilliance. Karen Grassel became famous for a certain role. How did she get that position? The opportunity to audition for the part of Caroline Less, lovingly called Ma, was a dream come true for Karen Grassel. Michael Landon, the Hollywood hunk famous for playing the lovable Joe Cartwright on the classic Bonanza series, might soon be appearing on screen with her. The thought was unbelievable to her. Grassel was emotionally devastated and disillusioned as what seemed like a fantastic opportunity at the time turned out to be a nightmare behind the scenes. Michael Landon, who was director, writer, and executive producer of Little House on the Prairie, gained full control of the casting process after NBC committed to the series. To find his ideal mother, 47 actresses tried out for the role. On behalf of Caroline Less in the part. Among the leading candidates was Hersha Parody, who would subsequently appear on the program in a different capacity. But in the end, Landon chose Grassel because, in his opinion, she resembled a pioneer woman. Almost no one has ever heard of Karen Grassel before in the film or television industries. She had a degree in dramatic arts and extensive training at the university level, but she had very few film credits despite her stellar theatrical experience. Landon, who was deliberately hiring actors like Catherine, who had solid theatrical backgrounds but no Hollywood baggage, didn't appear to care about that. Richard Bull and McGregor. But selecting the appropriate kids was the most difficult casting decision he had to make. Professional daughters with stage moms were not something Landon wanted. Sincerity was what he sought. Melissa Gilbert played Laura and Melissa Sue Anderson played Mary. While filming, he referred to them as Missy and Half Pint, respectively. Also, Lindsay and Sydney Greenbush, who were twins, performed the part of little Carrie because of restrictions against child labor. The actors were all flawless. However, there was more to the story than met the eye behind those innocent Prairie smiles. The strain that Michael Landon and Karen Grassel were experiencing behind the scenes. Little House on the Prairie had Michael Landon and Karen Grassel playing the ideal pair, but their real-life romance was everything but. Tension simmered beneath the surface of the welcoming border charm, intensified by unequal power dynamics, wage conflicts, and conduct that Grassel would later characterize as degrading. At the beginning of the program, Grassel was excited to have Landon as a colleague. His role as Bonanza's beloved little Joe Cartwright had already brought him widespread fame. But the thrilling turn of events soon devolved into something terrifying. Grassel believed her efforts were going unappreciated as Little House grew in popularity. She asked for a rise before the second season began because she felt she deserved it. However, it was later discovered that Landon had vetoed the request. He had cited her character's lack of popularity as an argument for her remuneration not reflecting her true worth, drawing comparisons to, as opposed to the younger actors. A change occurred in the mood following this argument. Grassel claims that Landon started treating her with disdain, failing to include her in important plot points, and generally making her feel insignificant. She felt harassed during filming. Insults and indifference dampened her impact. This should have been a watershed moment in Ma's career, but instead it had become an emotionally taxing dream role. Although Grassel, difficulty wasn't the sole obstacle that existed in the background. While the period clothing looked great on screen, they were a real pain to film in. Wrapped in layers were the female members of the cast. Leggings, petticoats, boots, and garments with long sleeves that feature an eye hook at the back. During filming in the unforgiving California heat, Simi Valley, where the show was shot, regularly had summer temperatures of above 100 degrees and temps that soared beyond 80 degrees. Actress Allison R. Grimm, who played the delightfully evil Nellie Olson, said that the temperature on set reached above 100 degrees on her first day there, and that wasn't even taking into consideration the intense lighting that was utilized. Almost immediately after skipping breakfast, she started to feel dizzy. Recalling being lightheaded while establishing a scene, she refrained from speaking out for fear that someone would assume she lacked the physical strength required for the task. She said she sounded like she was speaking from a hospital bed, since she became so weak as the day progressed. Suddenly, her eyesight became hazy and dark. Despite her ordeal, she managed to finish the day's shoot after a medic revived her on set. One of the most recognizable TV villains of that time would be her eventual demise. She claimed, however, that the heat and the heavy wardrobe were the true villains. Meanwhile, Michael Landon wasn't merely playing the part. He contributed significantly to Little House as a writer, producer, and director. His tenure on Bonanza provided him with ideas and sometimes full scripts, which he brought over. There were a few episodes of Little House that were eerily similar to previous Bonanza plots, even down to the camera angles and speech. A Matter of Circumstance, an episode of Bonanza from 1970, provided one of the more glaring instances. Little Joe is left home alone after being booted by a horse. He tries to cut off his own hand to avoid infection, but he passes out before he can complete the task. A Matter of Faith, which aired 6 years later on Little House, depicts Caroline's injury to her leg in which she nearly cuts herself before passing out while she is home alone. Writer B.W. Sander and director William Claxton collaborated on both episodes. The parallels didn't stop there either. The Little House tale, Someone Please Love Me, was based on the Bonanza episode, A Dream to Dream. Written at the tender age of 12, He was 7 years old when he inspired the Little House series. Even while these ideas could have been recycled to save writers room time, they did show that Landon often used the same material. The discomfort extended to the hair of the actors as well. When Allison was younger, Nellie Oleson had spectacular ringlets. Argram's private main. Every night, she would sleep in her curlers and get to the set as early as 4:30 in the morning. To put up with the curling iron she needed for her look perfect. The costume shop made her a one-of-a-kind wig in the end, but getting her a new wig was no picnic. The wig was secured with a metal comb and numerous bobby pins to keep it in position throughout the long days of filming and the rare on-set altercation. Aaron pinned. So uncomfortable that it didn't feel good at all. On especially bad days, the pins would dig into her scalp, occasionally causing little wounds. The sensation of rubbing her head would reveal specks of blood on her fingers. After that, the hairstylist on site would quickly apply sieves astringent to her wounds so filming could resume. One of the original producers of the show, Ed Friendly, said that the Ingalls family was living it up behind the scenes despite the fact that they struggled on television with crop failures, poverty, and severe winters. In a subsequent interview with People magazine, Friendly, who co-created the show with Landon, commented that the adaptation had deviated excessively from the novels written by Laura Ingalls Wilder. According to Friendly, the Ingalls family had been softened and polished for network appeal. One change that bothered him was that the kids wore shoes. Landon allegedly didn't want them to be the poorest kids in town, which Friendly thought defeated the purpose of portraying frontier hardship. Another network executive apparently objected to having the family live in a sod house, calling it too depressing. As a result, there was a sudden upgrade to a frame house. Friendly, in his frustration, made the claim that the show was nicknamed How Affluent Is My Prairie, and made a joke about the Ingalls having everything but a Cadillac. In the end, Friendly left the show before it even aired, but it still became a cultural phenomenon even without him. Little House on the Prairie had a certain allure for viewers, despite the intense heat, recycled plots, and behind-the-scenes tension. However, for the cast, especially Karen Grassel, the experience was far from charming, despite the heat and invisible injuries. From blackouts to professional slights and emotional wounds, life behind the camera was anything but the simple joys of Walnut Grove. Fans expected a clean family drama about love, resilience, and frontier values, but they were blind to the hidden cost, physical, emotional, and professional, that some actors quietly paid to make that dream a reality. Karen Grassel had both on set and off. She struggled with an alcohol problem. By 2021, she had spent decades as a beloved figure in her memoir, Bright Lights Prairie Dust, Reflections on Life, Loss, and Love from Little House's Ma, Caroline Less revealed a much darker side to her character than anyone had anticipated. The book was deeply personal, revealing not only the making of Little House on the Prairie, but also Grassel's struggles, triumphs, and heartbreaks throughout her life. Grassle began keeping journals when she was 13 years old, seeking to make sense of her upbringing with an abusive father. In those early entries, she laid the groundwork for a memoir that would endure all of it, including her own struggle with addiction. She detailed the complex relationship she had with Michael Landon, her co-star and boss. But what struck me most was her candor about the demons she confronted privately after the cameras stopped rolling. In 1977, that all changed, beginning with what appeared to be an innocent moment. At the cast luncheon she had planned, she had been allowed a glass of wine, the only drink she had ever had on the job. But when she returned to the set, she became obsessed. She went outside, splashed water on her face, rinsed her mouth with mouthwash, and smoked a cigarette, but it didn't help. Her thoughts wouldn't stop racing about the wine. She knew something was wrong. A week later, she traveled to a feminist conference, where she was supposed to deliver a speech. For some reason, Karen was so nervous that she drank a little too much in the night before her speech. As a result, her delivery was flat and she felt ashamed. Afterwards, she went to see an old friend who had recently started attending Alcoholics Anonymous. Her friend was honest and told Karen that she had a problem, and for the first time, Karen couldn't deny it. She returned home and made an effort to stop drinking. The choice came, and it was harsh. She would never drink again. She got treatment. She failed again. Another wasted night, another broken discussion, another round of tears. Her father's death from alcoholism a few months after she became sober served as a sobering reminder. She made the conscious decision to live sober, clear-headed, and resolute in her desire to regain her voice. However, despite finding strength in recovery, she faced another silent battle, this one not contained in a bottle, that she had to overcome. Karen Grassel finally spoke out about her experience with Michael Landon on set of the Little House on the Prairie pilot. Coming from a theater background, television was a whole new world for her. Michael Landon welcomed her with open arms. She remembers him as being very sensitive and kind in those early days. In her memoir, Bright, Grassle revealed that her relationship with Landon was far from harmonious. She directed with care, offered support, and gave her space to find her footing. Initially, it felt like the beginning of something magical, but the magic didn't last. Grassle finally opened up about what really happened behind the scenes nearly 40 years after the beloved series ended, surprising many fans with the truth. The world saw Charles and Caroline less off-screen as a loving frontier couple, but Grassle and Landon were far from harmonious. The truth was that Landon could be incredibly cruel. Like Prairie Dust, Grassle painted a picture of an even more poisonous backstage environment than fans could have imagined. She related the vile jokes Landon told in front of the whole crew and cast, how he insulted her looks, her expressions, and her demand for equal pay, implying that she didn't deserve any more than the child actors. The show had only just started airing in 1974, and despite its rising star power, Grassle was still paid $2,000 to $4,000 per week, even during her peak. Landon allegedly told Grassle that her paycheck should reflect the fact that she wasn't as popular as she thought she was when she asked for a rise at the beginning of the second season. Grassle admittedly felt insulted by this, but she hadn't intended to make unreasonable demands. She just wanted fair compensation. After this, things changed. She started to notice her scenes being cut and her presence in the storyline shrinking, and Landon started treating her differently. I see. And when he wasn't avoiding her, he was making fun of her behind her back. The rest of the crew would often be the targets of his comments about her appearance. Grassle recalled feeling frozen, unable to confront him head-on. She had become accustomed to these kinds of put-ons as a woman working in the 1970s TV industry, so she never thought to retaliate strongly. Instead, she remained silent, stayed put, competent, and acted out the role of the good girl, with the expectation that circumstances would improve. Grassle remembers Landon using obscenities like C***T and making disgusting remarks about women's bodies, so the brutality wasn't over yet. She went on to say, "The worst of it occurred during their private one-on-one sessions, those sweet bedroom chats that fans loved. She relished recording those sequences when the couple would subtly flirt while venting about their recent troubles. It got to the point where those scenes were intolerable." Landon started making crude jokes as they lay in bed, surrounded by a full male crew in hot lights. Grassle gave a detailed account of the experience, describing how humiliating it was to feel trapped in that small, overlit room with men standing all around her and no way to escape. Despite the strain, the two were able to reconcile in the years after the show ended. Grassle reflected on that, expressing her gratitude that their relationship ended on a more positive note before Landon's death in 1991. Many of Landon's co-stars and collaborators have long paid tribute to him, often painting a warm, funny, and deeply caring picture. However, Grassel's revelations added a new dimension to that story. Not only that, but Melissa Sue Anderson, who played Mary Ingalls, also offered her perspective in her memoir, The Way I See It, a look back at my life on Little, revealing that she had spoken critically of him. House. She admitted that, from what she could see, Landon was a wonderful father. However, she also said that, at work, he was overbearing. He had a cruel streak and would publicly and relentlessly pick on specific people, teasing them. House also revealed an interesting detail about the series finale, when Landon blew up Walnut Grove, not only as a dramatic ending, but as an act of revenge, according to Anderson. Although Michael Landon is remembered as a talented actor, writer, director, and producer, and remains deeply loved by countless fans and even many cast members, his legacy is far from simple. The stories from behind the scenes paint a far more complicated picture, filled with creative genius, high pressure, quiet pain, and the cost of keeping the peace in a time when speaking up wasn't always an option. Little House on the Prairie is beloved by many, but the truth behind the scenes is far more complex. More complex than his on-screen image implies, Landon gained a reputation behind the camera for being a pain to work with, highly emotional, and especially demeaning to women. Karen Grassel wasn't the only one who finally spoke out when she published her altering book. Another voice quickly lent credence to Grassel's revelations. Allison R. Grimm, a former Hollywood producer. Actress R. Grimm, who played the notoriously wicked Nellie Oleson, opened up about her time working with Landon, providing a picture that both backed up Grassel's claims and added new depth to the character. At a memorial service for Bob Hope and U.S. veterans, R. Grimm characterized Landon as more crazed, nasty, and dangerous than the innocent farmer he played. According to her, Landon drank, smoked, told terrible jokes, and embraced a work environment that reflected the male-dominated, whiskey-fueled vibe of Mad Men. She compared the set atmosphere to an old boys' club where locker room humor wasn't just tolerated, it thrived. There were tensions on set, but R. Grimm recalled that Landon drove a Ferrari, smoked chain cigarettes, and slept very little. He seemed to be driven solely by manic creative energy. She noted that Landon's drive, which was at full throttle all the time, could easily wear others down. The makeup room, she said, was a demilitarized zone where the cast members reset before going on set. Despite the mayhem, R. Grimm managed to stay calm. Landon's untamed energy was something she enjoyed as a teenager. She had no personal grudges against him and characterized him as incredibly eccentric, a man who was marvelous and crazy, and, although he was not everyone's cup of tea, she never found him boring. What fascinated her even more were his contradictions. He played a poor prairie farmer on screen, but drove a Ferrari in real life, and he married 3 times, and lived a life far from humble. R. Grimm's story didn't reflect Grassel's trauma, but it confirmed the bigger picture. Pa Ingalls, the man the public loved, was complex, imperfect, and frequently careless with his power. Behind the scenes, he was so dominant that nobody dared to challenge him. Even those who were abused, like Grassle, remained silent for decades. This was conditioned by the power dynamics of the industry and an era that normalized women's silence. Although Grassel's revelations have shed new light on long-buried uncomfortable truths, her memoir complicates rather than destroys Landon's legacy. It reveals the cost of brilliance without empathy or humility, peels back the perfection veneer, and asks fans to consider the characters. R. Grimm, who went on to write her own best-selling memoir, Confessions of a Prairie Bitch. How I Survived Nellie Oleson and learned to love being hated, emphasized that the show had a way of bringing everyone together, despite it all the dysfunction. They were once again a family the second the cameras started rolling, even though there were rifts within the family behind the scenes. Most people remember Little House on the Prairie as an innocent, touching slice of Americana. However, for some of the cast members, the reality is darker. Power struggles, painful silences, and memories that hurt even now predate the show by decades. How Michael Landon's imagination caused problems before he became. Being America's most adored frontier father, he had already established himself as the magnetic Little Joe on Bonanza. Both series became legendary, representing hard work, family values, and classic Americana. However, behind the scenes, things were seldom so pure. While Little House exposed Landon as a controlling perfectionist, Bonanza was the birthplace of that fire. It was at the Ponderosa Ranch where he refined his acting skills and clashed with co-workers. He was already causing trouble before he started writing scripts and directing episodes on his own. Along with becoming a hot-headed heartthrob, he was also determined to control the narrative, on screen and off. It's no secret that Hollywood is full of on-set feuds. While it's expected that not everyone will get along, some tensions behind the scenes can blossom into rivalries that ruin an entire production. This is bad news for everyone involved. The cast suffers from a toxic work environment, and viewers can't help but feel like they've lost in the process. Behind-the-scenes drama can sometimes eclipse what's happening on screen, and in extreme circumstances, it can even eclipse the show's legacy. Bonanza, one of the longest-running Western dramas on television, ran from 1959 to 1973, providing 14 seasons of traditional frontier storytelling. It was a watershed moment in American television, a program that allowed viewers to mature alongside its characters and actors. As the years went by, the staff at Bonanza honed their skills, honed their storytelling, and created something that felt genuine. Acting requires dedication, perseverance, and a thick skin. Michael Landon, who played Little Joe Cartwright, was at the center of it all. Little Joe was a fan favorite from the start because he was young, charming, and impulsive. The similarities between the character and Landon's performance were noticed by those in the know. Landon brought a raw energy to the role that could instantly light up a scene or heat things up. A source of tension on set was director William Claxton, who, according to the book, once made an unfiltered appearance in a televised interview and didn't hold back. This intensity, while captivating on screen, occasionally caused friction for Landon Tom Ito, who portrayed Little Joe as defiant and characterized him as hot-tempered and high-spirited, reflecting Landon's own personality in his early years on the show. He called Landon's early behavior pugnacious, and even called the actor a brat. The first few seasons of Bonanza weren't always easy. Claxton remembered a young actor whose enthusiasm often clashed with authority. However, as with any long-running series, time affected everyone involved. Landon changed, Claxton said. His restless energy found a new purpose as he got older. Starting off as an artistic obsession, Landon's fascination with television's technical and creative aspects, writing, directing, and producing, shaped his second act of career. Viewers of Bonanza witnessed more than just an actor evolving. They witnessed a man taking charge of his own destiny, thanks to this creative drive. By the time Little House on the Prairie came along, Landon had evolved from a lead actor to a creator, having learned the ropes of set leadership, story crafting, and shaping the vision of a show on Bonanza. This change had a profound impact on his relationships with others, too. Where there had been friction before, there was now focus. Rather than fighting the system, he was building it. However, it had also produced a multifaceted individual. Some lauded his intelligence and work ethic, while others found his leadership style authoritarian and even dictatorial. This complexity accompanied him into his subsequent endeavors on Little House, where co-stars such as Allison R. Grimm and Karen Grassel would later expose the stormy side of things. Some saw Landon as an exceptional guide, while others found him difficult to collaborate with. Regardless, no one could dispute his skill or development. One could say that Landon's life was like a TV character arc. He started off as a raw, charismatic young man who was a bit of a handful, but he evolved into a man who was perfectionist and obsessed with storytelling. Landon was a contradiction, able to make viewers cry on screen while causing tension off-screen. It's clear that Bonanza influenced Michael Landon, and Landon in turn influenced Bonanza. Like the show that made him famous, Michael Landon's legacy is layered, complex, and profoundly human. What are your thoughts on this actor? Share them with us in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe and click. The actor grew up on that set, matured within its scripts, and used its lessons to launch himself into a whole new creative phase. The show gave him his start, but it also tested every part of his being. The video that will play next